This, my friends, is the MZ1 by Xtrfy and RocketJump, and for all intents and purposes it otherwise represents the definitive edition of a Project 4 mouse, even if it strictly isn't one. In its box you'll find the mouse itself, some spare mouse feet including an optional sensor ring, and that's pretty much it. I'd recommend using that sensor ring if you're on a pad that features a softer base, as it would help reduce any DPI deviation as you push your mouse into the surface, but to be honest, there's no reason not to install it anyway. As I also made a point of mentioning it's completely free of any plastic packaging as well, which is obviously a nice touch, #SaveThePlanet. Anyway, the MZ1 comes in a length of 111mm, height of 37, and with the grip position of roughly 53 to 55 depending on your grip. Truth be told, I had no plans of requesting a sample of this mouse given its narrower design, and of course the fact it looks nothing like an IntelliMouse Pro DefAdder or EC2, but due to its flatter right side with less of an hourglass shape towards the middle, something you typically find on a standard ambidextrous shape, I have to admit I'm pleasantly surprised by what arrived. I'm somebody that tends to squeeze their mouse when tracking at medium range, and if I do this on the majority of ambis, that curve inwards, such as the one found on the M42, usually becomes a problem as it's often uncomfortable where my pinky rests flat, creating somewhat of a gap. But here with the MZ1 that isn't an issue, as it's more ergo and clearly designed for right-handed players only. With my 19.5 by 10cm hand size, I'd prefer something closer to a grip width of 60, and maybe that's something for the future on a larger model. What I will say though, and this is in regards to any mouse that aggressively cuts off the back to supposedly give more control, is that rather than achieve that goal it instead does, I'd say, the polar opposite for how I hold the mouse, because all that happens is I simply grasp it further forward and that higher back and more aggressive slope hits my palm, an issue I also had with the Outset AX, which employed a similar design philosophy. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is that it's for this reason that I probably wouldn't recommend the MZ1 if you hold the mouse like I do, unless of course you're prepared to do some adapting. But is that actually an issue though? No, I don't think so. I mean, this is a mouse built by RocketJump, PhazeOG himself, and hopefully by doing this it will also fit other players as well. Now, it's really hard for me to talk about all the various types of grip because my preference is toward palm, but I think I can say with some level of confidence that the MZ1 has been designed primarily for fingertip use. Now, you can claw grip it, but I would say most of you, particularly with larger hands, would prefer the M42, which has a slightly wider grip width of 56 compared to the 53 as advertised here on the MZ1. But again, this is all internal speculation, and I definitely recommend checking out other reviews from the likes of HausGaming on YouTube, Pzogel on Tech PowerUp, and Phase on Reddit. Back to the mouse though, I would of course prefer it to have no holes, but they have brought it down to a very impressive 56 grams, and it's well balanced, built, and has no issues with structural integrity, i.e. I can't make it creak, rattle, nor activate the side buttons when squeezing. If you find this mouse comfortable, then it could very well be your end game, and that's because internally you can expect that same great performance from the other Project 4 lineup, which were effectively flawless. The only real difference here is that its primary switches have been upgraded to the KLGM 8.0s, and that it features their brand new EasyChord Pro, both of which offer an improvement. Admittedly, I'm not huge on the comfort grooves present on mouse 1 and 2, but that is something I would adapt to, and regardless, they still feel incredibly tactile and responsive. My only real complaint is that the mouse wheel button is a little tough to spam, as there's very little resistance that helps it bounce back, but I can't imagine people spam click that button anyway. Here's a listen to all of the buttons. Underneath you'll find 100% PTFE mouse feet and a switch which, in combination with the top button, will allow you to adjust the Pixar 3389 CPI from 400 through to 16,000, the RGB color, brightness, effects and speed, polling rate, lift-off distance, debounce time, and it'll also enable you to utilize the button as F11 for binds in-game, though it may default as full screen in several apps. Now, since this review will probably get a ton of views, And despite it being identical in performance to Xtrfy's M4 and M42, here's my usual test to determine an expected level of performance from the mouse internally. Now in terms of acceleration, moving the MZ1 from left to right of my GP4 at different speeds shows that we end up in roughly the same place, and that's taken into account some small amount of human error. This of course means that you'll be able to add your own preferred amount afterwards, which is great. As for its max tracking speed, I can swipe the mouse as fast as humanly possible without malfunction, and that's thanks to its advertised max tracking speed of up to 10.16 meters per second. I did have some issues with the lowest LOD setting due to my stupid brain lifting the mouse whilst tracking, but thankfully you can adjust this from 1 to around 2.3-2.4 millimeters, to which I prefer the latter. In terms of button latency, Xtrfy started with CSGO, so you can pretty much expect latency to be exactly where it should be. I could do a bump test, but I know Pzogel is reviewing this shortly over a tech power-up, so we'll leave it to him, and I feel personally no issues at all. Button debounce is adjustable between 2, 4, 8 and 12 milliseconds, and there are no issues with mini jumps in Shoot Mania, nor double clicks or slam kicks on my copy when set to 2. Shoot Mania, whilst of course dead today, did feature something called variable jump. Here your jump height was influenced directly by how long the button was held down, and an otherwise too high of a debounce time would make our smallest jump instead of medium sized jump. And this is because the button isn't released quick enough before the second is activated. This also means there are no issues with full height rocket jumps in Quake, because obviously both mouse 1 and mouse 2 can be pushed down simultaneously without delay, i.e. you won't be jumping before you shoot or shooting before you jump. You'll always reach maximum height.
3, 2, 1, fight.
So my final thoughts, well it's an interesting one because whilst I knew going in that it wasn't going to be a mouse for me, I also knew that Xi started with the death ladder as well, and in that respect I was mostly curious about where he's ended up after starting with the mouse that I currently main, and to be honest, I guess I'm pleasantly surprised, though perhaps I should have expected it. I'd like to think I could design the perfect mouse if given the opportunity as well, and I do believe this partnership between Xi and Xtrfy has been a successful one. There are only a handful of companies I trust to make a competitive gaming mouse right, and Xtrfy is certainly one of them, and I'm looking forward to the next collaboration should it happen in future, and perhaps it will be something more to my liking. So I guess my conclusion here is simply this. Xtrfy currently offer the M1, 2 and 3 with the 3310 sensor, and now the M4, 42 and MZ1 with the 3389. Whilst this shape is not for me, the point is that there's a shape for everyone somewhere out there, and if the MZ1 happens to fit your criteria, then it could very well be your endgame. There are no issues to be found with performance. I mean, tracking enemies, holding angles and hitting flick shots will serve no problem if you find comfort in the mouse. You will of course be paying a little extra due to this collaboration, but it is hard to put a price on endgame, so if you think it could be yours, then go for it. You never know. In the meantime, if you've liked the video, then make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and do stop by my Twitch stream where I broadcast weekly. If you have any questions or comments, then of course leave them down below and I will get back to you, but for now take care, keep gaming, and I'll catch you in the next video.